Tonight, we begin with something that sounds deceptively simple, maybe even a touch glamorous, if you're only familiar with its modern equivalent, being a hairdresser. But we're not talking about your local salon with its comfy chairs and lavender-scented conditioners. Oh no, we're diving headfirst into the grim, dangerous, and not-so-glamorous world of hairdressing in ancient Rome, where a split end could mean a split lip, and a bad hair day for your client could literally be your last. We're peeling back the frescoes to see what life was really like for the ornatrix or the tonsure, the stylists who sculpted the iconic looks of an empire, often at great personal cost. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. It truly helps the channel more than you know. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world and seeing our little community of late-night history buffs grow. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Tonight, you are not a senator, not a legionary, not even a humble merchant. Tonight, you are something far more intimate and far more vulnerable. Congratulations, you've just woken up, probably on a thin mat in a cramped, windowless cell somewhere in the slave quarters of a wealthy Roman domus. The air is stale, thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, lingering cooking odours, and the ever-present miasma of a city without modern sanitation. This isn't the Rome of majestic temples and triumphal arches, not for you. This is the Rome of service, of fear, and of endless, thankless labour. And your specific labour? You are an ornatrix, a female slave whose entire existence is dedicated to one thing, the hair of your domina, your mistress. Forget any notions of choosing your profession. You didn't pick this. Perhaps you were born into slavery in this very household. Perhaps you were captured in a distant land, your previous life brutally erased, and sold in a market like livestock, your skills, or perceived aptitude, for intricate work noted by a shrewd buyer. Maybe you were a debt slave, your freedom traded for a pittance. Whatever the path, your reality is the same. You are property. You have no rights, no agency, no say in what happens to your body or your day. Your value is tied directly to your ability to please, and in the world of Roman aristocratic women, pleasing them with their coiffure is a task of Herculean proportions and Sisyphean repetition. The first thing you feel, even before the grumbling of your empty stomach, is a knot of anxiety. What mood will the domina be in today? Will she demand that impossible new style sported by the empress, the one that requires 3 hands and the patience of a stoic philosopher? Will the old calamistrum, the curling iron, heat evenly today, or will it flare up and singe that crucial lock of hair, inviting a torrent of abuse? There's no snooze button on this dread. Your day begins when your mistress decides it does, and it ends when she is finally, if temporarily, satisfied. Let's talk about your client, your sole, all-powerful, terrifying client, your Roman mistress. Picture a woman of immense wealth and equally immense boredom, her social standing often her only real battlefield, and her appearance a primary weapon. She doesn't just want to look good, she wants to project power, status, and adherence to the latest imperial fashion. And you are the brush, the comb, the heat, and the hands that must sculpt this vision into reality, often from contradictory or vaguely expressed desires. Make me look like Livia, she might command, but younger and more regal. Good luck deciphering that. Roman hairstyles, especially during the early empire, weren't just a quick blow-dry and a spritz of hairspray. We're talking architectural marvels. Think of those Flavian period busts with their towering masses of curls, braids, and twists. Structures so elaborate they look like they defy gravity. And they practically did, with your help. You're not just combing hair, you're engineering. You're weaving, pinning, padding, and praying, that the whole edifice doesn't collapse during her afternoon stroll through the forum, because guess whose fault that would be? Yours. Always yours. She expects perfection, and she expects it delivered with an almost invisible touch. No pulling, no snagging, no sigh of exasperation from you as you attempt to tame a stubborn cowlick or integrate a heavy hairpiece seamlessly. You are to be silent, efficient, and psychic, anticipating her needs before she even voices them. A slight wince from her as you comb too vigorously near a sensitive spot on her scalp could earn you a sharp word or a sharper slap. Remember, to her, you are less than human, a tool with hands. Your discomfort is irrelevant, and how does she judge your work? Through a mirror, of course. But forget your crystal-clear modern looking glass. Her mirror is a piece of highly polished bronze, or perhaps silver if she's particularly wealthy. It reflects a dim, often slightly distorted image. This is both a curse and, very occasionally, a blessing. A curse because she might imagine imperfections that aren't there, or fail to appreciate the true artistry of your work in the murky reflection. Is that curl symmetrical? It looks off, she might declare. And your heart plummets because arguing is not an option. A blessing, rarely. If a tiny flaw goes unnoticed in the poor light. But don't count on that. Her eyes, and the eyes of her equally critical friends, are far sharper than any bronze mirror. The pressure is immense. Each morning session is a high-wire act. You're not just creating a hairstyle, you're managing an ego, navigating a minefield of potential displeasure, and trying to survive until the next session. If her husband found her particularly fetching that morning, you might escape unscathed. If she had a bad night's sleep or lost at gambling the previous evening, you might bear the brunt of her frustration, regardless of how perfectly you coiffed her. Her moods are the weather in your small, terrifying world, and you have no umbrella. Now, let's consider the tools of your trade. These aren't the ergonomic, safety-tested implements you'd find in a modern salon. Oh no, your primary weapon in the fight for follicular perfection is the calamistrum. This is essentially a hollow iron or bronze tube, sometimes with a solid cylinder that fits inside. You heat this contraption in hot ashes or directly over coals from a brazier. There's no temperature gauge, no low, medium, high setting. You test it by feel, by experience, by the desperate hope that you haven't let it get too hot this time. Imagine holding this piece of scorching metal, its heat radiating uncomfortably close to your own fingers, and then applying it to your mistress's precious hair. Too cool, and the curl won't hold, earning you a glare of impatience. Too hot, and you get that sickening sizzle, the smell of burnt hair, and the almost certain explosion of your mistress's wrath. You could singe her hair, leaving a frizzy, damaged patch that's impossible to hide. Worse, you could burn her scalp. The pain, the outcry, the immediate and brutal punishment. It's a constant, terrifying possibility. And if you burn yourself, you try not to cry out, because that would be disturbing her. Your combs are made of wood, bone, or if your mistress is very wealthy, ivory. They're not machine cut for perfect smoothness. They can have tiny imperfections, little splinters or rough edges that snag and pull the hair. Each snag is a micro-failure, a potential spark to ignite her temper. You learn to comb with agonizing slowness and care, your muscles tensed, listening for the tiny sound of a resisting strand. Pins are your scaffolding. Simple bronze or bone pins, often with a decorative head if they're meant to be seen, but mostly just functional, sharp points. You use dozens, perhaps hundreds, to secure the elaborate styles, anchoring braids, supporting rolls, fixing hairpieces. Each one is a tiny spear you must wield with precision. Drop one down her tunic? Catastrophe. Prick her scalp? Unthinkable. Or rather, all too thinkable, because the consequences are vivid in your mind, probably from seeing what happened to the ornatrix before you. Shears or forfex are your cutting tools. Again, these aren't the super sharp, perfectly balanced Japanese steel scissors of today. They're clunkier, often made of bronze or iron, and prone to dulling. Getting a clean, even cut requires strength and skill, and any mistake is glaringly obvious. Trimming split ends is a nerve-wracking affair, because what if you trim too much? What if one side looks a fraction shorter than the other in that infernal bronze mirror? You become obsessed with symmetry, with delicacy, with an almost surgical precision, but your tools are fighting you every step of the way. There are no electrical outlets, no convenient heated rollers, no diffuser attachments. Every effect you achieve is through manual labor, crude heat, and a deep understanding of how hair behaves under duress, both its duress and yours. You are a craftsman working with the most uncooperative and unforgiving materials, including your mistress's patience. And what about the products? If you thought the tools were bad, wait until you get a whiff of what passes for hair care and styling aids in ancient Rome. Forget light-as-air mousses and shine-enhancing serums. You're working with stuff that would make a modern cosmetologist run screaming. Let's start with hair dye, because Roman women, like many throughout history, were obsessed with chasing the fashionable color or hiding the dreaded gray. Want to go blonde? The color of those exotic German captives everyone's talking about. Your options are unpleasant. You might be tasked with applying a concoction of goat fat and beechwood ashes, or perhaps a poultice made from pigeon dung. Yes, pigeon dung. Imagine collecting that, preparing it, and then massaging it into your mistress's scalp, trying not to gag from the smell, all while maintaining an expression of serene competence. Some recipes called for caustic soaps imported from Gaul or Germany, things that could lighten hair but also strip it of all life and potentially burn the scalp. Another method was to repeatedly douse the hair in vinegar or lemon juice and have your mistress sit in the blazing sun for hours. Effective, perhaps, but also a recipe for sunstroke and hair that feels like straw. And whose fault would that be? Fancy a rich, dark black? You might be boiling down rotten leeches, or crushing walnuts and mixing them with ashes and oil. The smell alone would be a trial. These dyes were unpredictable, often messy, and rarely delivered the exact shade desired. They stained skin, fabric, and your already low spirits. And if the color came out patchy, or a weird greenish brown instead of raven black, you can guess who got the blame. You're not just a hairdresser. You're a medieval alchemist's apprentice. But your experiments are conducted directly on the head of a volatile aristocrat. For red tones, henna was available and relatively safer, but other, more dubious plant extracts might also be employed. And then there was the endless, tedious task of plucking grey hairs, one by one. Your mistress would sit, often impatiently, while you peered at her scalp, hunting for those silver traitors. Miss one, and it was a mark of your incompetence. Pull too hard, and it was a mark of your clumsiness. It was a no-win situation. Played out hair by painful hair. Styling aids were equally rudimentary and often pungent. Olive oil was a common base, used to give shine and manageability, but too much, and her hair became a greasy mess. Beeswax might be used to help hold styles, giving a stiff, somewhat tacky finish. Animal fats, lard, tallow, were also in the toolkit. Imagine the smell of slowly rancidifying fat in your mistress's elaborate coiffure, especially in the heat of a Roman summer. You try to mask these odors with perfumes, heavy, cloying scents made from flowers, herbs, and resins. So your mistress's head becomes a battleground of smells. Rancid fat, wood smoke from the curling irons, the metallic tang of dyes, and overpowering floral perfumes. And you're breathing this in for hours, every day. And then there are the wigs and hairpieces, the capillamenta and galleri. those towering hairstyles often weren't entirely the mistress's own hair. You'd be responsible for acquiring, preparing, and attaching these additions. Blonde hair from German tribeswomen, dark glossy locks from India. The spoils of empire often ended up on Roman heads. You'd have to clean this dead hair, perhaps dye it to match, and then weave it, sew it, and pin it into place so seamlessly that it looked natural. Or at least, as natural as a three-tiered beehive of curls can look. These pieces were heavy, hot, and could harbour their own unwelcome guests if not meticulously cared for. The sheer weight of some of these creations must have given your mistress headaches. And who would she complain to? You, of course. So you're not just styling, you're a chemist, a purchasing agent for exotic hair, a wig maker, and a master of olfactory disguise. All with tools that belong in a museum of medieval torture and ingredients that belong in a compost heap. Congratulations, you have no dental plan, but at least you get to make your mistress smell like a walking, talking, very angry potpourri. Now, let's walk through the agony of application. This isn't a quick 15-minute appointment. Creating one of those elaborate Roman hairstyles could take hours. Hours you spend on your feet, your back aching, your arms growing heavy, your fingers cramping. You're likely working in a small, stuffy room, perhaps her cubiculum, bedroom, or a dedicated dressing room, with only the light from a flickering oil lamp or a small, high window. The air is thick with the smells we've already discussed. Burning hair, hot metal, dubious concoctions. You start with combing. Endless, patient combing to detangle and smooth. Then comes the sectioning, dividing the hair with mathematical precision according to the complex mental blueprint of the chosen style. Then the curling, iron by heated iron, curl by painstaking curl. Your senses on high alert for that telltale sizzle of overheating. Each curl must be perfect, uniform, placed just so. If it's a style involving braids, your fingers fly, weaving intricate patterns, pulling just tight enough to be secure but not so tight as to cause discomfort. A line as fine as a hair itself. All the while, you're under intense scrutiny. Your mistress might be chatting with other slave girls, or another visiting matron, but her attention, or a portion of it, is always on you, on her reflection. A sigh from her, a tapped finger, a sharp, "Gently, you clumsy fool." These are the punctuation marks of your morning. You learn to read her expressions, the subtle shifts in her posture, trying to anticipate her displeasure before it fully erupts. It's like diffusing a bomb, where the wires are strands of hair, and the timer is her patience. The constant threat of error is your shadow. Pull a single hair too hard, and she might yelp, then glare. Let a pin slip and scratch her scalp, and you might feel the sting of her hand against your face before you even register your mistake. If the style is asymmetrical, even by a hair's breadth she'll notice. Or she'll think she notices, or one of her catty friends will point it out later, and that deferred fury will fall squarely on your shoulders when she returns. "Everyone was laughing at me," she might accuse, "and it's all your fault." Burns are a particular terror. The calamistrum, heated in glowing embers, is an accident waiting to happen. If you misjudge the heat, or if your hand trembles from fatigue, you can easily scorch her hair, leaving a brittle, discolored patch. Or worse, you can touch the hot metal to her skin, her ear, her neck, her scalp. The immediate pain for her is one thing. The resulting punishment for you is another, far more drawn-out affair. She might scream, strike you, or demand you be flogged. A visible burn on her skin could ruin her social engagements for days, and that crime would be laid entirely at your door. Your own minor burns, the ones you inevitably get on your fingers from handling the hot irons, you ignore. They are part of the job, like calluses on a labourer's hands. And the plucking of grey hairs we mention? Imagine doing that for an hour, your eyes straining in the dim light, your mistress periodically twitching or complaining that you're too slow or too rough. "Did you get them all?" she'll demand, and you'll say, "Yes, Domina," praying that you did, because a follow-up inspection might prove you a liar or incompetent, both punishable offences. Then comes the integration of wigs and hairpieces. These could be bulky and heavy. You have to anchor them securely so they don't shift or, heaven forbid, fall off. This means more pins, more careful weaving of her own hair around the base of the piece, more structural engineering. The final result might look impressive, a towering confection of curls and braids, but you know the precarious reality underneath, the network of pins and tension holding it all together. You feel a brief, hollow sense of accomplishment, quickly overshadowed by the anxiety of whether it will last the day and whether she is truly pleased, or just pretending to be until she can find a new fault. Your work is intimate. You are in her personal space, handling her body. Yet there is no intimacy, no connection, only a power imbalance as vast as the empire itself. You are a skilled artisan, a sculptor, working in a living, breathing, and terrifyingly reactive medium. Every session is a performance, and every performance could be your last if you miss your cue. What if you're a tonser, a male barber and hairdresser? Is life any rosier? Marginally, perhaps, in some respects, but it's still a world away from a pleasant career. Tonsors often served male clients, dealing with hair, beards, and sometimes a few other personal grooming needs. You might be a slave attached to a wealthy household, just like an ornatrix, or you could be a freedman, or even a poor freeborn citizen trying to eke out a living in a small rented shop, a tonstrina, in a bustling insula. Let's imagine you're in your little shop. It's probably a cramped, open-fronted stall, the air thick with the smells of sweat, cheap perfumes, and perhaps the singed hair from a clumsy attempt at styling. Your main tool for shaving is the navacula, a straight razor. These weren't your Gillette Mach 5s with lubricating strips and pivoting heads. This was a sharpened piece of iron or bronze, and keeping it sharp was a constant chore. You'd hone it on a leather strop or a special stone, but its keenness was fleeting. Now, your client arrives. Maybe he's a grumpy old senator, or a swaggering young soldier, or a nervous merchant. You drape a cloth around him, hopefully a relatively clean one, and prepare your lather. This isn't a foamy, pleasant-smelling cream from a can. It might be a basic soap, or just oil and water. Then, the shave. You have to pull the skin taut with one hand and wield that navacula with the other, scraping away the stubble. A moment's inattention, a slight tremor in your hand, a sudden movement from the client, and you've got a bleeder. Nicks and cuts were incredibly common. So common, in fact, that Pliny the Elder mentions various folk remedies for staunching the flow of blood from shaving cuts. And remember, there are no antiseptics, no little styptic pencils. A cut isn't just a painful inconvenience, it's an open invitation for infection. In a world without antibiotics, even a small infected cut could turn nasty, leading to fever, inflammation, and worse. So, while your client might curse you for clumsiness, he's also probably a little bit scared. And if you gain a reputation as a slasher, your business will dry up faster than a puddle in the Forum on an August afternoon. So, the pressure to deliver a smooth, bloodless shave is intense. Beyond shaving and haircuts, which for men were generally simpler than women's styles, though still requiring care, your duties as a tonser might extend to what we'd now consider borderline medical or podiatric work. Got a painful corn? The tonser might try to pare it down with his razor. A troublesome ingrown toenail? You're on call. Some tonsors were even known to pull teeth, though you'd probably prefer a specialist for that if you had the choice and the coin. So you're part barber, part beautician, part minor surgeon's assistant. It's a mixed bag of intimate and often unpleasant tasks. If you're a slave tonser in a large household, You face similar pressures to the ornatrix, pleasing your master, avoiding punishment, long hours. If you're a free tonser with your own shop, you have a degree of autonomy, but you're still at the mercy of your clientele's whims and the daily struggle to earn enough to feed yourself and pay the rent. Your shop also becomes a local hub for gossip. Men would gather, chat, and exchange news while waiting their turn or getting a trim. This could be a source of information and entertainment, but also a place where reputations could be made or broken, including yours. A dissatisfied customer, complaining loudly in your shop, could drive away future business. So, whether you're dealing with the towering, precarious artifice of a matron's coiffure or the daily risk of drawing blood with a razor, life as a Roman hairdresser is fraught with peril. It's not about expressing your artistic vision, it's about survival, about navigating a world where your skill is valued, but your humanity is often dismissed. You are the unsung, often unthanked, and frequently abused artist of the Roman toilette. Let's talk about your social standing, or rather, the profound lack of it. If you are an ornatrix, you are almost certainly a slave. This means you are property, like a chair or a cooking pot, albeit a more specialized and expensive one. Your mistress owns you. She can sell you, beat you, abuse you in any way she sees fit, and there is virtually no legal recourse for you. Your life is entirely subject to her whims. A kind mistress was the dream, a rare and precious anomaly. Most were demanding, and many, according to contemporary writers like Juvenal and Ovid, were casually cruel. Juvenal, in his satires, paints a chilling picture. He describes a mistress enraged by a poorly done hairstyle. "Why is this curl standing up?" she shrieks, and then down comes the lash of bull's hide to punish the crime of the badly curled hair. He speaks of the ornatrices with their own hair dishevelled, their tunics torn, often stripped to the waist for beatings while they worked, their arms bruised from previous punishments. This wasn't hyperbole for poetic effect. This was a reflection of a grim reality for many. You are a scapegoat for her bad moods, her insecurities, her boredom. Imagine the psychological toll. You live in a state of constant fear. Every rustle of your mistress's robe, every tap of her finger, every change in her tone of voice sends a jolt of anxiety through you. You develop a hypervigilance, an acute sensitivity to her moods, because your well-being, even your survival, depends on it. There is no off-duty. Even when you're not actively styling her hair, you are on call, and the memory of past punishments or the dread of future ones is a constant companion. You have no personal life to speak of. Friendships with other slaves are your only solace, but even these are precarious, subject to the master's whims. A friend could be sold away tomorrow. Love, family, children, these are luxuries you can barely dare to dream of, and if you do attain them, they can be taken from you in an instant. Your body is not your own. It is a tool for her beautification and, too often, an outlet for her anger. For a tonser, if you are a slave, the situation is much the same. If you are a freedman or freeborn poor, you have your freedom, but your status is still very low. Barbers were often seen as gossipy, somewhat servile figures. You're providing a service, yes, but you're not a respected artisan in the way a mosaicist or a sculptor might be. Though even they had their struggles. You're dealing with the body, with its less glamorous aspects, and that often meant a lower social rung. You are still vulnerable to the whims of powerful clients, who might delay payment, demand unreasonable service, or spread damaging rumors if displeased. There's no union to protect you, no guild with real power to set standards or ensure fair treatment, especially if you're a slave. The concept of workers' rights is millennia away. You are entirely dependent on the character of your owner, or, if free, your clientele. And in a society built on hierarchy, and often brutal power dynamics, kindness from above was a lottery win, not an expectation. The systemic nature of this abuse is perhaps the most chilling part. It wasn't just one or two bad apple mistresses. The literature of the time, the legal status of slaves, the archaeological evidence of tools and spaces, it all points to a reality where the person styling the hair was in a position of extreme vulnerability. You are, in essence, invisible. Your skill is desired, your presence required, but you, the individual with your own thoughts, feelings and fears, are largely irrelevant to the person in the chair. You are the silent, trembling hands behind the imperial glamour. So, how do you cope? What are your solutions in this daily grind of fear and follicle management? Well, solutions is a strong word. It's more about survival strategies, often grim ones. Your primary coping mechanism is hypervigilance and an almost obsessive attention to detail. You learn to anticipate. You study your mistress's preferences like a scholar studies ancient texts. You know which way she likes her part, how tight she can tolerate her braids, which perfume she favors on which day. You become a connoisseur of her moods, trying to gauge the storm warnings in her eyes or the set of her jaw. This constant mental effort is exhausting, but it's your first line of defense. You strive for perfection, not for artistic satisfaction, but to avoid pain. Every curl you form, every pin you place, is a prayer for an absence of punishment. You become meticulous to a fault. You double-check, triple-check your work, squinting in the poor light, trying to see it as she will see it in her polished bronze mirror. You learn to work silently, almost invisibly, hoping that if you make no sudden movements, no unwelcome sounds, you might pass unnoticed, or at least unpunished. Desperate attempts to please are your daily bread. You flatter, if you dare speak at all, or if she is in a rare communicative mood. Oh, Domina, this new style brings out the sparkle in your eyes. It feels hollow, servile, but if it buys you a moment of her goodwill, it's worth the bitter taste in your mouth. You might try to subtly guide her away from styles you know are beyond your capability or the reliability of your tools, but this is a dangerous game. She might see it as insubordination. If you're an ornatrix, you might try to build alliances with other slaves in the household. Perhaps the slave who prepares her bath can give you a heads up about her mood. Maybe the cook can sneak you an extra crust of bread if you're lucky. These small acts of solidarity are lifelines in a sea of powerlessness. But betrayal is also a risk, as a jealous fellow slave might seek to curry favor by reporting your perceived mistakes. What about the tools and products? You learn their quirks. You know exactly how long to heat the calamistrum over those particular coals. You have your own secret, perhaps disgusting, but slightly more effective way of mixing that awful blonde dye to minimize the patchiness. You guard your best comb, the one with the fewest snags, jealously. These are not solutions in a modern sense. They are adaptations to a fundamentally flawed and dangerous system. They are the tricks of a survivor, not the choices of a professional. For a slave, the ultimate dream, the glittering prize at the end of an impossibly long tunnel, is manumission, being granted your freedom. This could happen. A grateful master or mistress, perhaps on their deathbed or after many years of loyal service, might free you. But it's a slim chance, a lottery ticket. And even if freed, you are a freed woman, liberta, or freedman, libertus, still bound by certain obligations to your former owner, still carrying the stigma of your past. But the hope, however faint, might be what keeps you going through the beatings and the endless, thankless hours. For the free tonser in his shop, coping means cultivating a reputation for skill and discretion. It means enduring the boorish behavior of some clients, swallowing insults, and always having a ready smile, even when you're seething inside or your feet are killing you. It means managing your meager earnings carefully, hoping you have enough for rent, for food, for new tools when the old ones break. The solution, is relentless hard work and a good deal of luck. But for many, especially the enslaved ornatrix, the most common coping mechanism is simply endurance. You learn to dissociate, to mentally retreat to a place where the shouts and the blows don't penetrate as deeply. You cultivate a stoic mask, showing no emotion, because emotion can be interpreted as defiance. You live from one successfully completed hairstyle to the next, a tiny victory in an unwinnable war. The grim reality is that there are no easy solutions. Your life is hard, your work is dangerous, and your rewards are few. You cope by surviving, day by miserable day, hoping that tomorrow might be slightly less awful than today. That's the best you can hope for. So, you're a hairdresser in ancient Rome. Your days are long, filled with the acrid smell of burning hair and questionable concoctions, the glint of primitive tools, and the ever-present fear of your client's explosive temper. You might be an ornatrix, a slave whose body and time are not your own, whose artistry is demanded but whose humanity is denied, living under the constant threat of brutal punishment for the slightest imperfection in a gravity-defying hairstyle. You meticulously craft beauty for a mistress who sees you as little more than a sentient appliance, a pair of hands to execute her whims, a convenient target for her frustrations. Each session is a tightrope walk over a chasm of potential pain. Or you might be a tonsor, a barber, perhaps with the precarious freedom of your own small, smelly shop, or perhaps enslaved in a grand house. Your daily dance involves wielding a sharpened piece of metal perilously close to your clients' throats, hoping not to draw blood, lest you be branded a clumsy butcher. You listen to endless gossip, trim unruly beards, and maybe even dabble in a bit of amateur podiatry or tooth-pulling, all for a few meager coins or the hope of avoiding your master's displeasure. You're navigating a world where a slip of the hand isn't just embarrassing, it's a potential source of infection and ruin. Forget the romanticized images of serene Roman ladies being gently coiffed by adoring attendants. The reality for you, the hairdresser, is one of physical discomfort, psychological stress, and social invisibility. Your tools are crude and dangerous. Your products range from ineffective to downright disgusting or harmful. Your workplace, whether a lavish private chamber or a humble street-side stall, offers little comfort and many hazards. You have no job security, no health benefits, no grievance procedures. If you're a slave, you have no rights at all. Your creativity is stifled, your worth measured solely by your ability to perfectly replicate a fashionable look or deliver a bloodless shave. This wasn't a career path chosen for its artistic fulfillment or financial rewards, not for most. It was often a sentence, a consequence of birth, conquest, or debt. The solution to the problem of being a Roman hairdresser wasn't a better conditioner or a sharper razor. It was a grim cocktail of fear, induced precision, learned subservience, and sheer, teeth-gritting endurance. It was about surviving the day, the hour, the client, hoping that the next elaborate hairdo or the next shave wouldn't be the one that brought disaster. So, the next time you effortlessly style your own hair with a range of sophisticated products and tools, or sit back in a comfortable salon chair enjoying a moment of pampering, spare a thought for your ancient Roman counterpart. For them, the pursuit of beauty was not a luxury or a pleasure, but a perilous, thankless, and often painful obligation. Their world was one where a bad hair day could have truly terrible consequences, and the only real artistry was in surviving it all with your skin and sanity more or less intact. They were the invisible artists behind the grandeur, their stories woven into the very hairs they so carefully and fearfully styled. And that, in a nutshell, is why it really sucked to be a hairdresser in ancient Rome. Your spine aches just thinking about it, doesn't it? Now go enjoy that modern invention called a pillow. You've earned it, just by listening. Hey guys! Tonight we begin with the complex, surprisingly treacherous, and utterly unglamorous world of being a hairdresser in ancient Rome, where a bad hair day could cost you more than just your tip. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, you picture ancient Rome, senators in togas, epic chariot races, grand banquets. Maybe you even imagine elegant Roman matrons with those elaborate, statuesque hairstyles you've seen on busts in museums. And you think, a hairdresser in Rome, how artistic, how sophisticated. Well, let's just pop that pretty little soap bubble right now. Forget any notion of a chic salon with cappuccinos and gossip magazines. Your reality is about to get a lot less pretty and a lot more pungent. Congratulations, you've just woken up. Not in a plush bed, mind you. You're on a thin, lumpy pallet, maybe stuffed with straw that's seen better decades, on a cold stone floor. If you're lucky, you're a slave ornatrix, a female hairdresser in a wealthy domus, a private house. This means you at least have a roof, however leaky, over your head. If you're less fortunate, you might be in a cramped, noisy insula, one of those notorious Roman apartment blocks, teetering precariously and always smelling faintly of smoke, sewage, and too many people. The air itself is a thick soup of odours, roasting meat from a nearby street vendor, the metallic tang of a blacksmith's forge, the ever-present miasma from the Tiber if the wind is right, and underlying it all, the faint, sweet-sour smell of unwashed humanity and overflowing latrines. This is your morning aromatherapy. Your first conscious thought probably isn't about artistic expression. It's more likely about the gnawing in your stomach or the ache in your back from yesterday's marathon styling session. There's no gentle alarm clock, no 5 more minutes. The sounds of the city or the stirring of the household are your cue, and you'd better be quick. Your mistress, the domina, will be expecting you. Her hair, you see, isn't just hair, it's a statement. It's her status, her husband's power, her family's honor, all woven into intricate braids and curls. And you're the highly skilled, highly expendable architect of that statement. Let's talk about what you don't have. You don't have stainless steel, precision-engineered shears. You don't have electric curling tongs with adjustable heat settings. There's no running hot water on demand, no gentle, pH-balanced shampoos, no deep conditioning treatments promising silky smooth results. Forget keratin. Forget Olaplex. These things are science fiction to you. Your professional toolkit is a charming collection of items that look like they belong partly in a kitchen, partly in a torture chamber, and partly in an archaeological dig. And in a way, they do. Your day begins before dawn. The domina needs to be ready for the salutatio, the morning ritual where clients and hangers-on come to pay their respects to her husband, the dominus. Her appearance must be flawless. So, you stumble through the pre-dawn chill, perhaps to a small, smoky brazier where you'll heat your primary weapon, the calamistrum. This is your curling iron. It's a hollow metal tube, probably bronze or iron, that you heat directly in hot ashes or over coals. Now, imagine trying to get this thing to the exact right temperature. Too cool, and the curl won't hold. Too hot, and you've just branded your mistress's scalp or, at best, singed off a precious lock of hair, leaving a delightful smell of burnt offerings. There's no thermostat, no indicator light. You learn by feel, by smell, by the silent, terrifying prayer that you don't mess it up today. Your own fingers are probably calloused and scarred from testing its heat. And while you're delicately toasting strands of hair around this primitive rod, you're probably also trying not to inhale too much smoke from the brazier, or from the oil lamps casting flickering, inadequate light. The room might be cold, drafty, and your mistress, still sleepy and irritable, is not known for her patience. One wrong move, one wince-inducing tug, and her mood can turn faster than milk in the summer sun. Remember, she might still be smarting from her husband's mood last night, or worried about a rival's new pallor, or just generally displeased with the universe. And you, my dear ornatrix, are the most convenient target for that displeasure. Then there are the combs, made of boxwood, ivory if she's very wealthy, or bone. Not the smooth, seamless plastic combs of today. These can snag, pull, and if not meticulously cared for, splinter. You'll use an arsenal of pins, bone, bronze, silver, even gold, some plain, some ornate, to secure the elaborate structures you're expected to create. These aren't just simple updos. We're talking towering edifices of braids, coils and curls, often built up over frames or pads made of wool or human hair. Think of the hairstyles of empresses like Livia or Agrippina the Younger, or later Julia Domna with her helmet-like coiffure. These styles were architectural marvels, requiring hours of painstaking labor, an engineer's precision, and an artist's eye. You are, essentially, a tiny, stressed-out construction worker whose building material is hair. And what if your mistress's natural hair isn't quite up to the task? What if it's thin, or the wrong color for the current fashion? No problem. That's what wigs and hairpieces are for. Rome had a thriving trade in human hair. Blonde hair, often sourced from Germanic or Gaulish captives of war, was particularly prized. So you might find yourself handling the severed locks of someone who recently lost their freedom, their family, their entire world. You're weaving their tragedy into your mistress's latest fashion statement. Poetic, isn't it? These wigs, called capillamenta, could be full wigs or smaller sections used to add volume or length. Attaching them seamlessly, making them look natural, or at least fashionably unnatural, is another one of your many talents. And they aren't cheap. Ruin an expensive imported wig, and you're in for a world of hurt. Let's not forget color. Roman women, like women throughout history, loved to experiment with hair color. Want to be a fashionable blonde? You might use a mixture of ashes from beech wood and goat fat, or perhaps a lovely potion made from fermented leeches, left to putrefy in wine for 2 months. Imagine the aroma. For darker shades, there were concoctions of black antimony, cypress leaves boiled with vinegar, or even less savory ingredients. Some dyes were corrosive, leading to hair loss or skin irritation. But fashion demands sacrifice, doesn't it? Especially when it's someone else doing the sacrificing, or enduring the smell of your chemical experiments. You're not just a hairdresser, you're a chemist, a rather smelly, unregulated chemist, working with substances that would give a modern health and safety inspector a seizure. The process itself is an endurance test. You're standing for hours. Your arms ache. Your back screams. Your feet throb. Your mistress might be leaning back, perhaps dozing, perhaps dictating letters to a scribe, or gossiping with another slave. You, however, are in a state of high alert. Every movement is precise, economical. You can't afford a stray hair, an uneven braid, a lopsided bun, her reflection in that polished bronze mirror, because glass mirrors are a luxury for the super elite or not yet as clear, is your judge, jury, and potential executioner. A typical elaborate style, like the tutulus, a high, conical style, or a later imperial fashion with its many tiers of curls, could take 3 or 4 slave girls, including you, several hours to complete. And it had to be redone frequently, sometimes daily. So, why does your mistress go through all this? And why do you? For her, it's about status. Her hairstyle announces her wealth, her fashion sense, her husband's position in society. It's a non-verbal signal to everyone she meets, from the lowest client at the salutatio to her rivals at the public baths or the amphitheatre. Her hair is a weapon in the social wars of Rome. When the Empress Livia sports a new, severe nodus hairstyle, you can bet every aristocratic woman in Rome wants something similar. You are on the front lines of these fashion battles, armed with your calamistrum and a prayer. For you, the motivation is far more basic: survival. If you are a slave, your entire existence depends on the whim of your owners. Pleasing your domina means you get fed, you have a relatively safe place to sleep, and you avoid punishment. A truly skilled ornatrix, one who could create the most fashionable and intricate styles, might even gain a small measure of favor, perhaps slightly better food, or a cast-off piece of clothing. But this favor is fickle, easily lost. Freedom, manumissio, is a distant, shimmering dream, rarely attained by personal attendants like you, unless your mistress is exceptionally generous or dies and leaves it in her will. And even then, as a freedwoman, your life is precarious. If you are already a freedwoman practicing as an ornatrix, you have a bit more autonomy, but you're still walking a tightrope. You rely on your reputation and a network of wealthy clients. One disgruntled matron, one rumor of incompetence, or, gods forbid, a styling disaster that causes public ridicule, and your livelihood could vanish. You're competing with other freedwomen and with the slave hairdressers in wealthy households. You need to be better, faster, perhaps cheaper, or offer some unique skill. Your hands, your eyes, your aching back, these are your only assets. There's no pension plan, no disability insurance. If you get sick, or your hands become too arthritic to hold the pins steady, you starve. It's as simple and as brutal as that. Economics is your silent, ever-present partner. Now, let's delve into the delightful social dynamics of your workplace. You are in a position of peculiar intimacy. You are literally inches from your mistress's face for hours each day. You touch her, you tend to her. You are privy to her morning moods, her complaints, her gossip. You hear her conversations with her husband, her children, her friends, other slaves. You know who she likes, who she despises, who she's having an affair with. You are a silent repository of secrets, some trivial, some potentially dangerous. But this intimacy is a dangerous illusion. You are not her friend. You are not her confidant. Not really. You are a tool, a skilled possession. You must be a ghost in the room, present, efficient, but invisible. Speak out of turn, offer an unsolicited opinion, or even show too much reaction to the juicy gossip you overhear, and you could find yourself in serious trouble. A matron might confide in you one moment, then have you whipped the next for a perceived slight or a clumsy movement. The power imbalance is absolute. She holds your entire life, your comfort, your pain, in her hands, just as you hold her hair in yours. The irony is probably lost on her. Consider the public appearances. After the morning salutatio, your mistress might be off to the baths. This isn't just about getting clean. It's a major social event. She needs to look her best. So, her elaborate hairstyle needs to withstand the journey by litter, the humidity of the bathhouse, though she wouldn't get her fancy hair wet, and the scrutiny of other women. Or perhaps she's attending a dinner party, a cena. Again, the hair must be perfect, a testament to her status and your skill. If her husband is hosting important guests, the pressure is even higher. Your work is a direct reflection on his household. A messy braid could be interpreted as a sign of a poorly managed estate, a careless master. It sounds absurd, but in the highly stratified and symbolic world of Rome, appearances were everything. And it wasn't just your primary mistress. In a large, wealthy household, there might be daughters, other female relatives, all requiring your services. You could be passed around from one demanding head of hair to another, each with their own preferences, their own temperaments, and each mistake, each moment of imperfection carries the same risk. You're a one-woman, perpetually stressed, mobile salon service operating under constant threat. What about the other end of the social spectrum? While you toil over the coiffures of the elite, what are ordinary women doing? Peasant women, shopkeepers' wives, the urban poor, they're not spending hours with a personal ornatrix. They have simpler, more practical hairstyles. A basic bun, a ponytail, braids they can manage themselves or with the help of a family member. Their lives are about hard labor, not elaborate display. Your clientele is exclusively those with the leisure and the wealth to indulge in such vanity. This concentration of high-status, high-expectation clients means you never get an easy day. Every job is a high-stakes performance. Now, let's say you are a male tonsor. Your life might be slightly different. Tonsors primarily served male clients, providing shaves, haircuts, and even minor medical procedures like bloodletting or tooth extraction. A charming combination of services. A tonsor might have a shop in a busy part of the city, a more public space. These shops were often centers of gossip and social interaction for men. While some tonsors also styled women's hair, particularly wigs, the intensely personal and time-consuming work of daily styling for a matron usually fell to a female ornatrix within the private confines of the domus. So, while the tonsor faced his own set of challenges, sharp razors and grumpy clients being universal, the ornatrix often existed in a more isolated, pressurized, and vulnerable environment. She was less visible to the outside world, and therefore her suffering was also less visible. How do you cope in this environment? What are your strategies for survival? Beyond just doing a good job, you learn to be an expert reader of moods. The slight tightening of your mistress's lips, the way she taps her fingers, the tone of her voice when she speaks to another slave, these are all crucial signals. You learn to anticipate her needs, her preferences, sometimes before she even voices them. A forgotten pin, a style that doesn't quite match her gown, these are rookie mistakes you can't afford to make. You develop an almost preternatural dexterity. Your fingers fly, weaving, braiding, pinning, all while maintaining a calm, subservient demeanor, even if your insides are churning with anxiety. You learn to work quickly but without seeming rushed. You become a master of the poker face. Your mistress might be raging about her no-good brother-in-law or the price of Numidian marble, but your expression must remain neutral, attentive, but uninvolved. Perhaps you develop your own secret concoctions. Maybe you discover that a particular herb, crushed and mixed with olive oil, really does make hair shinier, or that a certain type of clay helps to set curls. These little tricks of the trade could give you an edge, make your services more valuable. Of course, some of these concoctions might be useless, based on superstition, or even mildly harmful in the long run. But if the mistress believes it works, then it works, for your job security at least. And what about your tools? You guard them jealously. A good set of bone pins, a smooth boxwood comb, your trusty calamistrum. These are your livelihood. You clean them, you sharpen them, if applicable, you keep them safe. Losing or breaking a tool isn't just an inconvenience. It could be a disaster if you can't replace it quickly and your mistress demands her usual style. Then there's the constant supervision, the ever-present danger. Your mistress isn't the only one watching. There are other slaves in the household. Some might be allies, offering a whispered warning or a moment of shared sympathy. Others might be rivals, eager to see you fail and curry favor with the dominer themselves. A dropped hairpin could be reported. A moment of chatter with another slave could be twisted into a complaint of laziness. You are living in a small, enclosed world, a viper's nest of petty jealousies and power plays, and you are one of the most vulnerable players. The physical punishments were a stark reality. Roman literature is peppered with references to matrons abusing their slave hairdressers. Martial, the poet, wrote epigrams describing women stabbing their hairdressers with long hairpins for the slightest mistake. Juvenal, the satirist, paints vivid pictures of hairdressers being beaten, their tunics ripped for a poorly arranged curl. One poorly placed curl and the whip descends. He might as well have written for your job description. These weren't just literary exaggerations, they reflected a brutal truth. A slave was property, and a master or mistress had almost unlimited power to inflict corporal punishment. Your body was not your own. It was a canvas for their displeasure. Imagine the sheer terror. You're trying to arrange a complex series of braids, your fingers slippery with perfumed oil. Your mistress shifts impatiently, a pin slips. You see her eyes narrow in the reflection. Your heart plummets. What happens next? A stinging slap? A sharp jab with the very pin you just dropped? Or worse, a summons for the household overseer and his whip? This is the daily psychological grind. It's not just about skill, it's about nerve. It's about enduring constant, low-level fear, punctuated by moments of acute terror. And it's not just physical harm. The psychological toll must have been immense. The constant need to please, the lack of agency, the ever-present threat of punishment, the isolation, the physical exhaustion. There's no therapy, no understanding HR department, no concept of workplace bullying as a punishable offense. Your coping mechanism is often just to endure, to become numb, to pray to whatever gods might be listening that you make it through another day without serious incident. Now, let's talk about failure. What happens when things go truly, spectacularly wrong? Let's say your hand slips while using the heated calamistrum, and you leave a nasty burn on your mistress's scalp. Or you completely bungle a new, fashionable style, and she's ridiculed at a social gathering. The consequences could be dire. A severe beating was almost guaranteed. You might be sold off. And you wouldn't be sold to a kind master. Problem slaves, or those deemed incompetent, were often sold to work in the mines, or on rural agricultural estates under brutal overseers, or even to brothels. For a slave ornatrix, this was a death sentence of a different kind. If you're a freedwoman, a major failure means professional ruin. Word would spread like wildfire among the wealthy matrons. Don't go to Lucia. She burned Lady Flavia's scalp and her hair still smells of singed ambition. Your clients would dry up. You'd lose your income. Destitution, begging, or worse, would follow. There was no safety net. Reputation was everything, and it was incredibly fragile. And what about the failure of simply getting old? Your eyesight starts to fade. Your hands, once so nimble, become stiff and plagued by tremors from years of repetitive, fine motor tasks. You can no longer manage the intricate work. You can no longer wield the calamistrum with precision. If you're a slave, you become a burden. You might be relegated to more menial tasks if you're lucky, or sold off for whatever pittance you might fetch if you're not. If you're a freed woman, you simply can't work anymore. Your career, your livelihood is over. There's no retirement party, no gold watch, just the terrifying prospect of an impoverished old age. The Roman legal system offered you, the ornatrix, very little protection, especially if you were a slave. Slaves were legally considered property, res mancipi, things to be bought and sold, used and abused, like cattle or furniture. While extreme cruelty could sometimes be frowned upon, or even, in very rare later imperial periods, legislated against in a minor way, for the most part, your owner's power was absolute. A freedwoman had more legal rights, but she was still in a vulnerable position, often dependent on the goodwill of her former master, now her patron, or other wealthy patrons. Without powerful connections, navigating the Roman world was a perilous business. The institution of patronage was crucial. Your mistress, if you were a slave, was your owner. If you were manumitted, she often became your patron. You owed her deference and certain services. In return, she might offer some protection or assistance. But this relationship was, again, wildly unbalanced. She held all the cards. For a freedwoman trying to build her own hairdressing business, attracting the patronage of several wealthy and influential women was key to survival and success. But patrons could be as fickle as fashion. And then there are the overarching social norms. Roman society, for all its engineering marvels and philosophical debates, was built on a rigid hierarchy and a foundation of slave labor. The idea that a slave had feelings, rights, or deserved gentle treatment was, for many, a completely alien concept. The expectation was obedience, subservience, and the silent absorption of the master's or mistress's moods and frustrations. You were an outlet for their stress, a convenient object upon which to vent their anger or displeasure. This was baked into the very fabric of society. Your suffering wasn't an anomaly, it was part of the system. The beautiful, elaborate hairstyles you created were, in a way, symbols of this oppressive system. Outward displays of wealth and leisure made possible by the unseen, unacknowledged toil and fear of women like you. Think about the sheer waste of human potential. You might have a keen intellect, an artistic soul, but your entire existence is narrowed down to the strands of hair on someone else's head. Your worth is measured in perfectly executed curls and braids. Any other talents, any personal aspirations, are irrelevant or even dangerous to possess. So, when you see those serene marble busts of Roman empresses and noblewomen with their intricate hairdos, take a moment. Look beyond the artistry of the sculptor and try to imagine the flesh and blood woman who wore that style, and then look further into the shadows behind her and picture the ornatrix. Picture her tired eyes, her aching fingers, the faint smell of singed hair and fear clinging to her simple tunic. Picture her small, anxious face, hoping, praying that this time, this curl, this braid is perfect. Because for her, perfection wasn't just a professional standard, it was a daily strategy for survival. The romanticized image of the Roman stylist, an artist creating beauty in a golden age, crumbles pretty quickly under the harsh light of reality, doesn't it? It was a life of immense pressure, physical hardship, and constant, gnawing anxiety. There was little glory, scant reward, and always the looming threat of punishment for the smallest error. You weren't creating for joy or for self-expression. You were creating out of necessity, out of fear, in a system that valued your skill but not your humanity. So, yes, the reality of being a hairdresser, an ornatrix, in ancient Rome was far from the glamorous picture sometimes painted. It was often a grueling, thankless, and perilous existence. The intricate hairstyles that seem so symbolic of Roman elegance were often sculpted by hands that were calloused, burnt, and trembling with fatigue or fear. These women were artists, yes, but they were artists working under duress. Their canvas, the hair of the powerful, their payment, often just the temporary reprieve from pain or punishment. Next time you're at your modern salon, perhaps complaining that the water is a bit too hot, or that your stylist is running 10 minutes late, take a second. Picture your Roman counterpart. Imagine her, up before dawn, coaxing a reluctant curl with a primitive metal rod heated in open embers, the smell of lye and expensive, cloying perfume filling the small, dim room. Her back aches, her stomach is empty, and her mistress is already tapping an impatient finger. Her mood as unpredictable as the Roman mob. One wrong move, one accidental singe, and her day, perhaps even her life, could take a catastrophic turn. There's no union to protect her, no minimum wage, no kindly boss to appeal to. There's just the raw, unvarnished power dynamic of master and slave, or patron and struggling freedwoman. Yet, despite all of this, they created beauty. They crafted these elaborate, iconic hairstyles that we still marvel at today, preserved in stone and fresco. These hairdressers, mostly anonymous women, whose names are lost to history, were essential cogs in the vast, complex machine of Roman society. Their skill allowed the elite to project their power and status, to engage in the intricate dance of social competition. They endured, they survived, and their silent, often painful, labor contributed to the enduring image of Roman civilization. Perhaps the true artistry wasn't just in the arrangement of hair, but in the quiet resilience, the sheer human grit it took to perform that art day after day, under such unforgiving and brutal conditions. They might not have had much, but they had a skill that, for a fleeting moment each day, made them indispensable, even if utterly unappreciated. And in that small, grim truth lies a story far more compelling than any romantic fantasy. Hey guys! Tonight we begin with the grim, dangerous and not so glamorous world of the ancient Roman hairdresser. A job that sounds quaint but was anything but. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. So, you've decided to embark on a career in ancient Roman hairstyling. Perhaps you've seen those serene marble busts of Roman matrons, their hair sculpted into intricate coronets of curls and braids, looking every bit the picture of classical elegance. You envision yourself as a respected artisan, a creator of beauty, perhaps even a confidant to the elite. You imagine a sun-drenched villa, the gentle murmur of sophisticated conversation, the satisfying click of finely crafted shears. Well, hold on to your toga, because the reality is about to hit you harder than a poorly thrown discus. Forget the art gallery serenity. You're stepping into a world where your skills are essential, but your life, especially if you're a slave, is anything but your own. Congratulations, you're an ornatrix, a specialist female slave hairdresser, or perhaps a tonsor, a male barber. It's before dawn. The city of Rome, a sprawling, seething mass of humanity, is just beginning to stir, but you've been up for a while. No gentle alarm chimes for you. More likely, it was the rough shove from an overseer or the gnawing emptiness in your stomach that serves as your medieval version of an alarm clock. You're not leaping out of a comfortable bed. If you're an ornatrix in a wealthy household, your bed is a thin straw pallet, crammed into a tiny, airless cell in the slave quarters, a space you probably share with several other souls. The air is a rich tapestry of odours: stale sweat, unwashed bodies, the faint, lingering aroma of yesterday's cheap wine, and the ever-present miasma of Rome itself, a complex bouquet of wood smoke, latrines, street food, and things you'd rather not investigate further. Privacy is a word that doesn't exist in your vocabulary. Your first task isn't sipping a hot cup of something. It's more about a quick, cursory splash of cold water on your face from a communal basin, if you're lucky. Soap, as we understand it, with its lovely lather and delightful fragrances, was more of a Gallic peculiarity. Romans, especially the wealthy, preferred to anoint themselves with oils and then scrape the dirt off with a strigil. For you, that's a distant dream. Your tunic is coarse, utilitarian, lightly stiff with dirt and smelling faintly of, well, everything it's encountered in the past week. Laundry day for slaves wasn't a priority for the household, and when it did happen, it often involved aged urine for its ammonia content. So yes, you smell. Your colleagues smell. Your mistress probably tries very hard not to smell, which is, in part, where you come in. Now, let's get to your salon. If you're an ornatrix, this is your domina's private chamber. Don't picture a modern, brightly lit, minimalist space. Think small, probably cluttered. Light comes from flickering oil lamps, which sputter, smoke, and cast dancing, unreliable shadows that make precision work a nightmare. These lamps burn olive oil, often of a cheaper grade, and they fill the air with a greasy soot that settles on everything, including your lungs. Windows are few, small, and likely covered with wooden shutters or, if your domina is truly affluent, thin sheets of mica or selenite, which offer a translucent glow rather than a clear view. So, you're essentially working in a perpetual smoky twilight, attempting to execute hairstyles that would challenge a modern stylist with full studio lighting. The temperature? Unregulated. Freezing in winter, baking in summer. Your physical comfort is an afterthought, if it's a thought at all. And your tools. Oh, your precious, terrifying tools. Forget lightweight, ergonomic, Japanese steel. Your kit looks like it was borrowed from a blacksmith with a sideline in amateur surgery. You have bronze or iron scissors, known as forfex. They are heavy, clumsy, and require constant sharpening, which they rarely get. More often, they're dull, meaning they pull and snag hair as much as they cut it. Each snip is a small prayer that you don't take off too much or, gods forbid, a piece of your mistress's ear. Then there are the combs, pectines, crafted from wood, bone, or, for the truly elite, ivory. They have wide teeth, narrow teeth, and a remarkable ability to get tangled in even the most cooperative hair, often snapping with a sickening crack at the most inopportune moment. But the star of your toolkit, the implement that causes your stomach to clench every time you reach for it, is the calamistrum. This is your ancient Roman curling iron. It's a hollow metal rod, usually bronze or iron. How do you heat it? You stick it directly into a brazier of hot coals, or hold it over an open flame. There's no temperature dial, no ceramic coating, no automatic shutoff. You, my friend, are the temperature gauge. You might judge the heat by a quick, cautious touch, by spitting on it to see if it sizzles appropriately, or by holding it perilously close to your own cheek for a split second. Too cool, and the curl droops pathetically. Too hot, and you've just singed off a lock of your domina's hair, filling the room with the acrid stench of burning protein and her immediate thunderous displeasure. The smell of scorched hair is a familiar occupational hazard, a constant reminder of the fine line you walk between success and disaster. Your domina is waiting, reclining on a couch or perched on a stool, perhaps attended by other slaves fanning her or offering refreshments. She is not known for her patience. Roman literature, especially poets like Ovid and Juvenal, is filled with descriptions of the elaborate hairstyles favoured by matrons, and your mistress expects you to recreate these architectural marvels. She's seen the latest empress on a coin, or envied the coiffure of a rival at the baths, and now it's your job to replicate it, perfectly, with your primitive tools and under her critical gaze. She might have a small, polished bronze mirror, speculum, held up for her. These mirrors offer a dim, often slightly distorted reflection, unlike our clear glass ones. So, she's judging your work based on a hazy, metallic image, which somehow makes her critiques even more terrifying because what she thinks she sees might be worse than reality. Today, perhaps, she desires the nodus style, with the hair parted and swept back from the face, puffed up over the forehead, or maybe a complex arrangement of braids and curls piled high, a style that became particularly popular during the Flavian period. These aren't quick updos, you're looking at hours of standing, your arms aching from being held aloft, your back muscles screaming in protest, your neck stiff. Your fingers, though calloused and surprisingly nimble, are constantly at risk of burns from the calamistrum, pricks from the long bronze or bone hairpins, acus, and stains from the various concoctions used on the hair. You are less a stylist and more a structural engineer, working with a very temperamental, living medium. The process begins. If her hair needs washing, an infrequent event compared to modern standards, it might be cleansed with saponaceous plants like soapwort, or perhaps with a mixture of fuller's earth and water, or even stale urine for its ammonia. a popular cleaning agent for togas too. Lovely. Drying is achieved with linen towels and thyme, or perhaps the gentle wafting of a fan by another, lower-ranking slave. No diffuser attachments here. Then comes the meticulous sectioning, combing out tangles with gritted teeth, yours, not hers, hopefully, and the painstaking formation of each individual curl around that fiery calamistrum. You hold your breath, count silently, and pray to whatever gods might be listening that you've judged the heat and timing correctly. A slight tremor in your hand could mean a crooked curl, or worse, a yelp of pain from the domina. Braids, too, are a staple. Not simple three-strand plaits, but intricate, woven patterns that crisscross the scalp, forming elaborate nets or circlets. These are then coiled, pinned, and sometimes sewn into place to create towering buns or complex scaffoldings of hair, and very often it's not all her own hair. Roman women, like many throughout history, craved what they didn't have. Blonde and red hair, often sourced from Germania or Gaul, was highly prized. This hair, taken from captured enemies or purchased from traders, was fashioned into falls, switches, or full wigs, capillamenta. Imagine handling this. It's not the silky, sanitized extensions you see today. It's human hair, of dubious origin and cleanliness, that you are now tasked with seamlessly integrating into your mistress's own locks, hoping the color match is passable in the dim light, and that no lice have decided to make the journey with it. Entire hairstyles were sometimes built upon wire frames or pads of wool to achieve the necessary volume and height, transforming your domina's head into a veritable public monument. And the dyes. Oh, the glorious, perilous world of ancient Roman hair coloring. If your mistress wishes to enhance her dark Roman tresses or cover the odd grey hair, a sign of age she'd rather deny, you might employ concoctions made from boiled walnuts, or a truly delightful mixture of rotten leeches and vinegar that has been allowed to fester in a lead pot for 2 months. The resulting black sludge smells as appealing as it sounds, and you're the one applying it, probably with your bare hands or a rough brush. Prolonged exposure to lead, what could possibly go wrong? For lightning, the options were equally charming. Pigeon droppings mixed with ash, lye, or goat tallow were popular. Some women would apply these mixtures and then sit in the sun for hours, hoping for a sun-kissed Germanic blonde. The chemical burns must have been spectacular. You, the hairdresser, are mixing and applying these caustic substances, getting them on your skin, inhaling their fumes. There's no allergy test, no protective gloves, no ventilation hood. Your long-term health is not a consideration. Now, let's weave in the delightful social fabric of your existence. You are a slave. This cannot be overstated. Your domina owns you as surely as she owns her furniture or her jewelry. She can be kind, she can be indifferent, or she can be a sadist. You have no recourse. Her mood, her whims, her insecurities dictate your entire day and, quite often, your physical well-being. A single hair pulled too tight, a pin inserted at a slightly uncomfortable angle, a curl that isn't bouncy enough, a style that she wore to a party last night where her rival received more compliments. Any of these perceived failures can unleash a torrent of abuse. Juvenal, the Roman satirist, paints vivid pictures of mistresses flying into rages, screaming at their ornatresses, beating them with mirrors, or even stabbing them with those long, sharp hairpins. "Why is this curl higher than that one?" she might shriek before delivering a painful jab. Imagine the sheer terror of trying to perform delicate work while your hands are shaking and your heart is pounding like a drum in a legionary march. It's not exactly conducive to award-winning hairstyling. There's no union to protect you, no grievance procedure, no ancient Roman equivalent of an HR department you can complain to about unsafe working conditions or an abusive boss. If you displease your mistress too greatly, or if she simply tires of you, she can sell you. You could be sold to a brothel, to the brutal conditions of the mines, or to a rural estate for back-breaking agricultural labor. So, the pressure to be perfect, to anticipate her every need, to flatter subtly, and to endure her outbursts in stoic silence is immense. Your very survival depends on your ability to navigate this treacherous, emotional landscape. You become a master of non-verbal cues, an expert in deciphering the subtle shift in her tone, the slight narrowing of her eyes, the impatient tap of her foot. These are your early warning systems. If you are a tonsor, a male barber, your situation might be marginally different, but not necessarily a walk in the forum. You might be a freedman, or still a slave within a large household. If you have your own shop, tonstrina, it's likely a small, open-fronted booth in a bustling, noisy insula, apartment block, or along a crowded street. These shops were notorious as centers of gossip. Men would gather not just for a shave or a haircut, but to exchange news, debate politics, discuss the latest chariot races, or dissect the most recent scandal. So, your workplace is constantly filled with a cacophony of voices, the clatter of the street, and the smells of Rome, along with the more specific aromas of singed hair. Yes, tonsors also used heated irons for styling men's hair, various oils, and the general musk of unwashed humanity. Your tools are similar to the ornatrix's, but include razors novaculae. These are straight razors, made of bronze or iron, and they need to be kept incredibly sharp using a leather strop. Shaving a Roman man with one of these, without the benefit of modern shaving creams or gels, they used oil or just water, is an act of supreme trust and skill. A moment's inattention, a sudden movement from the client, or a tremor in your hand, and you could inflict a nasty gash. In an era before widespread understanding of antiseptics and antibiotics, even a seemingly minor cut could become infected and potentially lead to serious illness or even death. So, you're not just a barber. You're a tightrope walker with a razor. Many tonsors also performed minor medical procedures, like extracting teeth, with equally terrifying pliers, or lancing boils. No dental school, no medical license, just a strong stomach, and hopefully a steady hand. Your shop sign might as well read, haircuts, shaves, and assorted agonies. Your clientele as a tonsor is varied. Wealthy men often had their own slave tonsors at home, so your shop likely caters to the less affluent, shopkeepers, soldiers on leave, craftsmen. You have to be a good listener. A repository of local knowledge, yet impeccably discreet. Repeating the wrong piece of gossip could land you in serious trouble, especially if it involves powerful individuals. You need to be up to date on the latest men's hairstyles too. Roman men's fashion changed with the emperors. The severe shortcuts of the Republican era gave way to the more stylized, often curled, locks favored by emperors like Augustus, Nero, or Hadrian. You learned these styles by observation, looking at statues, coin portraits, or other men in the street, or through painful trial and error on some unfortunate early adopter. No advanced seminars or style books for you. And the remuneration? If you're a slave ornatrix or tonsor, forget about wages. Your payment is basic subsistence. A roof, leaky, crowded, over your head. Food, the cheapest grain, maybe some vegetable scraps, rarely meat. And clothing, 1 or 2 coarse tunics. Your skill makes you a valuable asset, but that value belongs entirely to your owner. If you're a freedman tonsor with your own shop, you're likely living on the razor's edge, pardon the pun. You charge a pittance, perhaps a few asses, small bronze coins, for a shave or cut. Competition is fierce, with numerous other tonstrinae vying for custom. You're probably in debt to your landlord, struggling to make ends meet, hoping to earn enough denarii to feed your family and keep the oil lamp burning. The dream is a wealthy, regular patron, but those are as rare as a modest politician. Let's not forget the ever-present occupational hazards that go beyond an irate client. Those braziers of hot coals for heating the calamistrum? In a timber-framed Roman insula or a small wooden shop, they are a massive fire risk. Rome was plagued by fires. One stray spark, one clumsy knock, and your workplace, and possibly your home and half the neighborhood, could go up in a terrifying inferno. Then there are the fumes. The smoke from the oil lamps, the charcoal braziers, the often acrid chemical smells from the dyes and hair treatments. You're breathing this noxious cocktail all day, every day. There's no proper ventilation, no concept of air quality control. Your lungs are silently pickling. Roman occupational health and safety was, shall we say, rudimentary. It consisted mostly of try not to die. And the physical toll? It's relentless. Standing for hours on end, often in contorted positions as you reach around your mistress's head or lean over a client in a barber's chair. Repetitive strain injuries are a given. Your back probably feels like a sack of broken pottery by the end of the day. Your neck and shoulders are permanently knotted with tension. Your spine might make unsettling creaking noises when you move, like an old ship in a storm. Carpal tunnel syndrome? Almost certainly, though they'd have no name for it. They'd just say your hands are getting weak, or the spirits have afflicted your wrists. And when your hands, your most vital asset, start to fail you, if you're a slave, your value plummets. You might be relegated to more menial, physically demanding tasks if you're lucky, or sold off cheap if you're not. If you're a freedman, it means destitution. There's no disability benefit, no pension plan, no retraining program. You simply become unable to earn, and you starve. Imagine the psychological grind. Long stretches of tedious, repetitive work. Combing, sectioning, curling, braiding, pinning, punctuated by moments of sheer, heart-stopping terror. You're on autopilot, your mind perhaps drifting to your own troubles, and then a sharp intake of breath from your domina, or a sudden flinch from your tonsors client, yanks you back to full, adrenalized alert. Did you pull too hard? Is that iron too hot? Is that a wisp of smoke, or just a trick of the lamplight? Your stomach plummets. Every single day is a high-wire act performed without a net, over a pit filled with angry scorpions. The lack of personal agency, especially for an ornatrix, is crushing. You are a constant, intimate presence in your mistress's life. You see her without her public facade, unadorned, sometimes unwell, often irritable. You overhear her private conversations, her arguments with her husband, her gossip about her friends, her deepest anxieties, and her pettiest cruelties. You are a silent, invisible witness to the raw, unfiltered drama of the Roman elite. But you are powerless. You are a tool, a skilled implement, to be used and then discarded until needed again. Your own thoughts, your hopes, your fears, your family ties, these are of no consequence to your owner. You might have a slave husband, concubinalis, and children in the same household, but your access to them is entirely at the whim of your master or mistress. The threat of separation through sale looms constantly, a cold dread that never quite leaves you. So, what about the supposed glamour of it all? When your domina finally sweeps into her banquet, her hair a towering, gleaming edifice that commands admiration and envy, do you feel a surge of pride? Perhaps a fleeting sense of accomplishment? But you receive no public credit. No one praises the ornatrix. The compliments are for the domina's beauty, her impeccable taste, her wealth that allows for such adornment. Your reward is the absence of punishment, the quiet relief of having successfully navigated another perilous commission. If you're exceptionally lucky, and the head cook is in a good mood, you might get a slightly better portion of leftovers from the feast. But more often, your reward is simply permission to go and collapse in your squalid quarters. And trends. Roman hairstyles were as fickle as the gods. What was chic under Augustus would be hopelessly outmoded by the time of the Flavians and positively ancient by the Severan dynasty. Empresses often set the styles, and their images were disseminated on coins and statues. You had to keep up. You had to be able to look at a tiny profile on a denarius and somehow translate that into a three-dimensional reality on your mistress's head. There were no beauty schools, no trade magazines, no online tutorials. You learned by keen observation, by whispered exchanges with other ornatrices at the public baths, if you were ever allowed to go, or by terrifying experimentation. Failure to adapt meant becoming obsolete, and for a slave, obsolescence was a fast track to a much harsher life, or the dreaded auction block. You weren't just a hairdresser. You were a reluctant fashion historian, constantly scrambling to stay relevant. Let's be brutally honest. Some of these hairstyles were, by any rational standard, utterly preposterous. We see them on statues and marvel at their complexity, but imagine the sheer engineering involved. Layers upon layers of curls, braids woven into basket-like structures, tiara-like rolls of hair, often augmented with significant amounts of false hair, or even structured on wireframes. These creations could effectively double the height of a woman's head. How did they sleep? Probably propped up, very carefully. And you, the ornatrix, were responsible for ensuring this teetering tower of tresses remained stable throughout a long evening of dining and socializing, often using sticky concoctions of beeswax and resin as a primitive form of hairspray, or a veritable forest of sharp pins. If that magnificent coiffure started to list like the Tower of Pisa halfway through the appetizer, guess who would bear the brunt of the ensuing humiliation? Not Isaac Newton, you. As a tonsor, you also encountered the less appealing aspects of Roman heads. Lice were endemic. Skin conditions, scabs, and rampant dandruff were par for the course. You're up close and personal with all of this, often with no gloves and only rudimentary notions of hygiene. You might offer supposed remedies, herbal washes, pungent oils, or salves of questionable efficacy. Your clients came not just for grooming but for the social interaction, a brief escape from their own daily grind. And you, with your aching feet, your ever-blunt razor, and your shop reeking of 1,000 previous customers, were their confidant and cleaner-upper, all for a handful of small change. Did you find any creative joy in this work? Any artistic fulfillment? Unlikely. You were, for the most part, a technician executing a predetermined design. Your creativity was channeled into damage control and illusion. How to make thinning hair look fuller. How to artfully conceal a receding hairline or a bald patch. How to make a series of slightly singed curls look like a deliberate style choice in the mercifully dim light of an oil lamp. Any artistry was entirely in service of your client's or mistress's vanity and status, not your own expressive urges. You were a craftsman, yes, but an anonymous one. Your masterpieces were fleeting, destined to be undone by a night's sleep or a change in fashion, your name never attached to them. The days were punishingly long. You'd start before sunrise, and if your domino was attending a late-night banquet or your tonsor's shop stayed open to catch the evening trade, you could be working well past dusk. The extra oil lamps brought in for evening work only added to the smoke, the heat, and the eye strain. There were no weekends as we know them, no paid vacations, no sick leave. If you were too ill to work, and a slave, you might get some rudimentary care if you were valuable, or you might be left to recover or die as fate decreed. If you were a freedman tonsor, being sick simply meant no income. Your life was an unrelenting cycle of service, punctuated by exhaustion and the omnipresent threat of things going horribly wrong. Even casual conversation was a minefield. As an ornatrix, you were privy to the most intimate details of the household. As a tonsor, your shop was a clearinghouse for every rumour in the city. You had to develop an incredibly discreet tongue and an ability to appear deaf and dumb when necessary. One carelessly repeated remark, one piece of overheard information shared with the wrong person, could have catastrophic consequences for you or for those you served. Silence or anodyne pleasantries, coupled with an expression of intense, servile concentration on your task, were your best defenses. You learned to become a ghost in the room, a pair of skilled hands attached to a carefully blank face. Your own personality, your own inner life, was a luxury you could rarely afford to display. So, picture yourself. You've been on your feet for 6 hours. The small room is hot and stuffy. The oil lamp is smoking again, making your eyes water. Your mistress has changed her mind about the style 3 times already. Your fingers are cramping, and you can still feel the phantom heat from the calamistrum where it brushed your knuckle an hour ago. She's complaining about the heat, about a headache, about the quality of the German hairpiece you're trying to integrate, which she insists makes her look like a barbarian queen. Your back is a single throbbing ache. Your stomach rumbles, but lunch is a distant memory of stale bread. You meticulously place another pin, adjust another curl, trying to ignore the stream of complaints and the critical glint in her eye as she squints at her bronze mirror. This is your life, day in, day out. And when the ordeal is finally over, when the last strand is tucked into place, the final dusting of gold or mica powder applied to make the hair shimmer fashionably, the intricate edifice complete, what then? No applause, no "great job," no generous tip. If you're lucky, a curt nod of something approaching satisfaction. More likely, a critical final inspection, perhaps a minor adjustment demanded with an impatient sigh, and then a dismissive wave. You may go. You then have the joy of cleaning up, collecting the fallen hairs, wiping down the greasy, soot-stained tools, tidying the powders and pots. Your tools, crude as they are your responsibility. Losing or breaking one, especially the expensive ivory comb, would mean more trouble than you care to contemplate. You trudge back to the slave quarters or close up your little tonstrina as twilight deepens into night. You devour your meager dinner, more coarse bread, perhaps a thin gruel or some wilted vegetables. You might exchange a few exhausted words with fellow slaves, or with your family if you're a freedman, and then you fall onto your hard pallet, every muscle protesting, your mind a dull blank, knowing that the sun will rise in a few short hours, and the entire performance will begin anew. The same demands, the same anxieties, the same thankless, precarious toil. For a slave ornatrix, there was no real career ladder, no path to owning her own salon. Her skills made her a valuable commodity, but that commodity value was her owner's, not hers. The best she could hope for, perhaps, was manumission in her mistress's will if she was exceptionally skilled, loyal, and lucky, and if her mistress was uncharacteristically benevolent. But that was winning the lottery, not a predictable outcome of hard work. For most, this was their existence until they were too old, their hands too shaky, their eyesight too poor, or their knowledge of styles too outdated to be of further use. Then, their fate was uncertain, and usually unpleasant. So, yes, the next time you gaze upon a Roman statue, admiring the intricate waves and towering braids, spare a thought for the anonymous individual, most likely a slave, who created that fleeting masterpiece. It wasn't done in an atmosphere of artistic leisure. It was forged in a crucible of fear, discomfort, and relentless pressure, with primitive tools and the constant threat of corporal punishment. The elegance, you see, was built on a foundation of someone else's servitude and daily struggle. Being a hairdresser in ancient Rome, especially for the enslaved, was not a path to glamour or creative expression. It was a demanding, dangerous, and deeply unrewarding job. The truth is, it seriously sucked. The only 5-star review that mattered was the one that didn't end with you being flogged or sold down the Tiber, and that, in itself, was a daily triumph.